Erev Tov, everyone, and welcome to the House of Seven Beggars. And it is, if I can get the right mouse working, I'm working on three computers here. So it is Tuesday night. It is 8 p.m. here on the East Coast of the United States, here in the diaspora. This is the House of Seven Beggars, and therefore it must be the Shul Study Hall. Okay. Good to see everybody here. Those of you who are in the chat room, Ben, and yes, you will be able to ask questions. Yair, Shoshi, and that's about it so far. Okay, well, anyway, we are going to continue on with our study of the Talmud, and I apologize for the the mix up between what page we were on and what part of the Talmud we are on. We are actually on Mishna Megillat Shevi'it, chapter 10, which is page 346 of the PDF. I think I actually said it was 326, which is back on chapter 6. But we are on 346 in the PDF, which is the beginning of chapter 10. So, and we got John. John has joined us, so glad to have everybody here. And like I said, if I can remember which mouse and which computer I'm working on, this should go fairly well. So, and just so you know, yes, we did have music at the beginning of it, and actually the video is playing on that computer, and the audio is playing on this computer. So when we get to the break, it might be just a little bit off, but again, until we we'll eventually get it figured out how to get the sound on the computer through the mixer and out to you so that everything syncs up. But it may take us a little bit of time. So anyway, as we are going to be studying the Mishna with the Talmud, which is comprised mostly of the laws of the Torah. Therefore, the blessing for the study of Talmud is the same for the blessing for the study of Torah. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam asher kiddushanu b'mitzvotav v'tzivanu la'asok b'divrei Torah. Okay, so let us begin. It has been a while, and I am going to have to move that mouse over there, because I am going to continually keep grabbing it if I better get that mouse where I know where it's at. Crystal has joined us. Great. Okay, numbers are jumping there. Okay, so if I do not move that mouse, I'm going to keep grabbing it and trying to move it, and I'll have no idea where I am when it comes time for the break. So, Mishnah 1. And again, we are on page 346. The sabbatical year cancels a cash debt, whether it is secured by bond or not. But shop debts, it does not cancel. If, however, it had been converted into the form of a loan, then it is canceled. Rabbi Yehuda says the former debt is always canceled. The wage of a hireling is not canceled. But if it had been converted into a loan, it is canceled. Rabbi Yosei says the payment for any work that must cease with the 7th year is canceled. But if it need not cease with the 7th year, then it is not canceled. Okay. Mishna 2. Check to see if anybody else has jumped in here. Okay, so Mishna 2. He who slaughters a cow and divides it up on the new year, if the month had been intercalculated, the debt incurred by then is remitted. But if it had not been intercalculated, it is not remitted. Okay, fines for outrages, for seduction, for defamation, all other obligations arising from legal procedures are not canceled. A loan secured by pledge and one the bonds of which have been handed over to a court are not canceled. Okay, so let's skip down here to the notes, and I probably should get the note number. So when this talks about intercalculated, for example, Elul, the preceding month has been declared by the Beit Din to possess 30 instead of 29 days. Accordingly, the day when the cow was distributed among purchasers was the last day of the 7th year, and the debts are released. Note that debts are only released at the end of the 7th year. Okay. This would be in reference to the Yovel, the Jubilee. Okay, so Mishnah 3. A loan secured by a pros bull. Okay, so that would be it was a declaration made in court to the effect that the law shall not apply to a loan transacted, and so on. So a loan secured by a pros bull is not canceled. This was one of the things instituted by Hillel the elder, for when he observed people refraining from lending to one another and thus transgressing what is written in the law, beware lest there be a base thought in thy heart, he instituted the pros bull. Now, this talks about in the law. It talks about the 7th year, and it talks about the Shemitah year and the Yovel year, and how things are calculated by value depending on the time between the Shemitah year or the Jubilee, that you're supposed to increase or decrease. But one of the things that the Torah tells us specifically about this is that we are not allowed to just say, well, the Jubilee is coming up here, in the next year or the next couple of years, and I'm not going to get whatever I expect out of it, or I'm not going to get the full value of, that I may not get the full value of what I believe it is worth, because I'm going to have to, release it or turn it back in the 7th year, the Yovel year, the Jubilee year. That I'm just not going to make a loan or anything like that. And the Torah is very specific about cautioning us against doing that. And here we see that people were transgressing this so often that Hillel the elder had to come up with this pros bull to keep people from refraining and thus breaking the law. I mean, they're keeping one law in one hand, but they are actually breaking the rest of it on the other hand. Okay, so Mishnah 4. This is the formula of a prosbul. I declare before you so and so, judges of that place, that touching any debt that I may have outstanding, I shall collect it whenever I desire. And the judges sign below, or the witnesses. Mishnah 5. An antedated prosbul is legal. If postdated, it is illegal. Antedated bonds of loans are not valid, but those postdated are valid. If one borrows from 5 persons, a separate prosbul must be made for each creditor. But if 5 borrow from the same person, then one prosbul will suffice for them all. A prosbul is written only for a debt secured by immovable property, such as a house or a piece of land or something like that, something that cannot be moved, something that can't be taken or hidden or something like that. And if a debtor has none, then the creditor can give him a title to a share, however small, of his own field. If he had land in pledge in a city, a prosbul can be written on the security thereof. Whose pet. It actually says whose pet in here. It's actually whose pet. Rabbi Huspet says a prosbul may be written for a man on the security of his wife's property. Okay, so again, this goes back to this whole thing. Well, this is a patriarchal society and all of the feminist stuff that goes on about, how terrible the Torah is and the law is unfair and this and that and the other thing. And here we find, once again, we find that this is not so. Women at that time, at the time of the writing of the Talmud, and even long before that, had their own property, held their own property, were able to buy and sell, just as a man would. In fact, the ketubah is a marriage contract, and the marriage contract actually, as part of the eshrun and those things, that a woman brings certain things with her into the marriage. They are written out and so on and so forth. And that if she leaves the marriage, those things return to her. They are her property. Okay, so this whole thing with all religions are terrible to women and they try to subjugate them and all this other stuff. Here we have it. We have proof right here in the Talmud. This is a falsehood. This is a inaccuracy that is being fed to people. That women, Jewish women, for a very long time had their own property, held their own property, and so on and so forth. We even have rulings from the great Rabbi Meir, who we have all quoted in the Talmud many times, about a woman and her property. There are many cases where a woman is trying to get a get of divorcement because of either physical or mental abuse by her husband and stuff, where Rabbi Meir sides with the woman, comes out and tells her that yes, the man must give her a get of divorcement, and he is to return all her property to her. So, now that I'm off my soapbox, we can move on with this. Okay, so a proposal may be married, may be written for a man on the security of his wife's property, or for an orphan on the security of property belonging to his guardian or her guardian. Mishna 7. A beehive. Okay, Crystal, and I'm so glad this was in here because I got this wonderful gift from Muddy Acres Farms. I got 2 honey bears full of honey, which is good because the last honey bear that I had was just about getting empty. And this arrived just in time. The only reason I hadn't said anything about it earlier was because, well, most of you know how I feel about the mail service in the area that I live. And they had put the package into one of those lock boxes, and then they leave the key in your regular mailbox. And they put it in the drop box and gave us the key, and the key didn't work. And we couldn't get into the box. We had no idea what was in there. And it took a week, an entire week, to get the post office to switch it to another box and give us the key for the other box. Because it was a whole thing about having to be coordinated. You know, we had to put the old key back into the mailbox. The mailman would pick up the key. Once he had the key, he would go to the box. He would open the box up. He would take it out. He would put it into another box. He would lock it. Then he would go back to our mailbox, and he would put it back into our mailbox. Aye, such a mishigash. I mean, you know, this was complete mishuga. But we did get it. We got the book, and I am reading the book right now. It's called The Seventh Beggar. So, Crystal, and those of you who are listening, if you are looking for some honey, and I mean good honey, get a hold of Crystal. It's wonderful. And the thing that I like the most about it is that no matter how much you get, you can save it. Because the shelf life of honey, we know, is at least 3,000 years. Okay, now this is real honey. It's not some of the stuff that you buy in the store. Some of the stuff you buy in the store is not actually honey. But real honey has at the very least, we know that it will hold up for 3,000 years and still be edible. So you can buy a lot and store a lot. So anyway, okay, so getting back to the Mishnah, I keep getting sidetracked tonight for some reason. A beehive, Rabbi Eliezer says, is considered landed estate. Imagine that. A prosbul may be drawn up on its security, and it is not susceptible to uncleanness while it remains in its place. And he who takes honey therefrom on the Sabbath day is held culpable. All you beekeepers out there, the sages, however, say it is not like landed estate, which I can understand why they would say that. A prosbul may not be drawn up on its security. Remember, it has to be immovable. And a beehive is movable. I mean, you may not want to move it, but it is actually movable. Okay, so a prosbul may not be drawn up on its security. It does contract uncleanness while it in its place, and he who takes honey from on the Sabbath is exempt from any penalty. Okay, so again, here we have the dissenting opinion. And again, this is what is so great about the Talmud and about this discussion on the laws and stuff like that, is because many times we have a rabbi will say something, and the first response will be, well, what is the proof? What is your proof? You say this, but what is your proof? What is your proof text? Go back to the Torah and tell us where you derive your interpretation of the law to mean that. Or it may come back and say, we may have a dissenting opinion. So while we have the Shulchan Aruch, the Code of Jewish Laws, actually the Shulchan Aruch means the set table. While we have the laws as we observe them, we also have in the Talmud many times, for just about every law that we come up to, we find there is a dissenting opinion on it. And why I say that is a great thing is that because as old as the Talmud is, the discussion and the laws are still open for debate. It's not like we say that this is the way it is and that's the way it's got to be and we close the door on it. No, the discussion still goes on to this very day. Which one is it? Who was right? What's the proof text? What is it? Where in the Torah does it allow it? Where in the Torah doesn't it allow it? So that's why we continue to study these texts all the time, is because the question has not been closed. It is always open for debate. And I wish I remembered the rabbi's name who actually said it, and I'm going to have to look it up. I think it was Mizrahi or something like that. And Rabbi, if you're watching, why you would be watching this little show, I have no idea. But Rabbi, if you're watching, I apologize for not remembering your name, because what you had said was a fantastic statement, that Judaism is the ultimate heretic's religion, because we question everything. No question is ever closed for debate. The debate rages until this very day. And I love it. Just like the Torah, it is dear and precious and pleasant to us. Okay, so on from the beekeepers. Mishnah 8. If one would return a debt in the 7th year, the creditor must say to the debtor, I remit it. But should the latter say, nonetheless, I will repay it. Okay? So he says, okay, so the creditor says, okay, I'm going to give it back to you, or I'm going to forgive the debt, or whatever it is. I borrowed, $20 from you, or you borrowed $20 from me, and I'm going to remit it. I'm going to forgive the debt, and that's it. Okay, but if the debtor says, nonetheless, I will repay it, he may accept it from him, because it says that this is the word of the release. Similarly, okay, I remit it is the word of the release. I've released the debt. But if the person feels obligated, he may actually say to the person that he owes the money to, I'm still going to pay you back. And the person that he owes the money to may accept it. Okay. Because it says, and this is the word of the release. Similarly, when an involuntary manslayer has arrived at a city of refuge, remember the 7 cities of refuge, and the citizens thereof desire to do him honor. Okay? Now this is talking about the man who has killed a man unintentionally or unknowingly. You know, we have this story of the wood chopper chopping the wood, and the axe head flies off of the handle and strikes his friend, for whom he had no ill feelings from the day before and the day before that. In other words, he had never had any ill feelings towards this person, and there was no reason to suspect that he had intentionally murdered the person. This was an accidental killing. Okay, and again, we have to make that distinction between murder and killing. Murder is intentional. It's intentionally, planning on killing somebody, even if it's in the moment. It is planned, and killing is something that is either done in an effort to save one's life or the life of someone else, or it is done unwittingly, unknowingly, by accident. And again, we have the case of the two fellows jousting or joking around on the roof, and the one gives the other one a nudge, and the guy topples over the parapet and falls down and is killed. He didn't, there was no intention to kill the person or even to hurt him in any way. It was just a tragic accident. So anyway, the involuntary manslayer has arrived at the city of refuge, and the citizens thereof desire to do him honor. He must say to them, I am a murderer. If they say, none the less we would honor thee, then he may accept the honor from them, because it says, and this is the word of the manslayer. In other words, he has filled his obligation to notify the people who want to honor him that, I am a manslayer, I'm a murderer. And again, if they still wish to honor him, say they want to call him up for an aliyah for the Torah or something like that, once he has fulfilled his obligation to notify them who he is, and they still wish to honor him, he is allowed to accept the honor. Let's see if we got any questions. Do we follow the sages or Rabbi Eliezer? We're back to the beekeepers, right? In this case, it does not tell us. We would actually have to go to the Shulchan Aruch to find out what it says. And I actually have the Shulchan Aruch, but it might take me a little bit of time to look it up. But that is a good question. Which one? A lot of times in the Talmud, it will say, okay, well, we follow Rabbi Jose, or we follow Hillel, or we follow, we follow the sages or whatever. In this case, it doesn't tell us. And again, so, and this is one of those things, it's like, we come up on a question of Torah and of law, and we're not quite sure. Should we do it or shouldn't we do it? Is this permissible or is that permissible? And it's like I've told people for years. If don't ask the question if you don't want an answer. Okay, so typically if we were living in an area where there was a lot of Jews, we would follow the minhag of the community. So if the minhag was that, you could extract honey on the Sabbath, then that would be permissible. If the minhag was that, no, we don't, then it's not permissible. But if we go to another village and where they say it is not permissible or it is permissible, then we follow the minhag of the community. In fact, we read this the last time that we were together, way back on December 9th, that the rabbis tell us that, or was I reading that somewhere else? I might have been actually reading that in another commentary. But the accepted practice is that we follow the minhag of the community. So, okay, so Mishna 9. If one repays his debts in the 7th year, the sages are well pleased with him. If one borrows from a proselyte whose sons had become converted with him, the debt need not be repaid to the sons. But if he returns, and that kind of begs for an explanation. So let's go down here to note 32, and it says, children of a proselyte are regarded as newly born. Accordingly, they are not the legal heirs of their pagan father, and consequently cannot claim debts due to him. Nevertheless, if his debt is returned to them, the rabbis are pleased with the debtor. So I guess it would be kind of like entering into a contract with a minor. They actually kind of view it in that kind of terms as we would look at it today. You can't enter into a contract with a minor. So it would be the same here. Okay, so the debt does not have to be repaid to the sons, but the sages are very pleased if it is. So you can tell right there that it is, it's one of those things where you can say, well, no, you don't have to pay it back to the children, but the sages would be very pleased if you did. You know what I mean? Kind of nod, wink, wink, say no more, right? Okay. Okay, we are moving on here. So we are on page 349. We are on Megillat Terumot, chapter 1. Okay. Mishna 1. 5 may not give terumah. If they do so, their terumah is not considered valid. The heresh, the deaf mute, the imbecile, the minor, and the one who gives terumah from that which is not his own. If a Gentile gave terumah from that which belongs to an Israelite, even if it was with his full consent, his terumah is not valid. Okay? Terumah is that portion of the food that was offered as the sacrifice, or part of it was offered as a sacrifice, and the other person is obliged to eat the balance of it, right? Mishna 2. A Heresh who speaks but cannot hear may not give terumah, but if he does so, his terumah is valid. The Heresh from whom the sages generally speak is one who neither hears nor speaks, the deaf mute. Oh, okay, so Soshi picked up on that. Soshi, I'm very proud of you. Picked up on the nod, wink, wink, say no more. Okay. Okay, and any of you, the rest of you who did not get it, look up Monty Python and, sort through the hundreds of videos, and you may actually come across it, and you'll go, oh, that's what he meant. Anyway, excuse me. Mishna number 3. If a minor has not yet produced 2 hairs of puberty, Rabbi Yehuda says his terumah is valid. Rabbi Jose says if he has not arrived at the age when his vows are valid, which is the age of bar mitzvah, right? At 13 years old for boys, 12 years old for girls. At 13 years old, he becomes responsible for his obligations under the Torah. Okay, so Rabbi Jose says if he has not arrived at the age when his vows are valid, his terumah is not valid. But as soon as his vows become valid, his terumah becomes valid. Which makes sense. Terumah should not be taken from olives for oil, or from grapes for wine. Excuse me. If this is done, Beit Shammai say there is then terumah of the olives or grapes themselves, but Hillel says the whole terumah is not valid, whether it's the olives or the grapes or the wine or the oil. Mishnah number 5. Terumah is not taken from gleanings, from the forgotten sheaf, from peah, or from ownerless produce. Neither is it taken from first tithe, from which its terumah had already been taken. Remember, we had this whole long discussion about what had to be given and what didn't have to be given and all of that. We spent a couple of weeks on that. Nor from the second tithe and dedicated produce that had not been redeemed. Nor may it be taken from that which is subject to terumah, for that which is exempt, or from that which is exempt, or from that which is subject. Also, not from produce already plucked from the soil, for that still or that still rooted in it, or from that rooted to the soil, for that already plucked. Also, not from new produce or old, or from old for new. Also, not from fruit of the land, for fruit grown outside the land, or from those grown without the land, for those grown in the land. In all these cases, should this have been done. In other words, that portion should have already been taken. The terumah is not valid. So if it's already been taken, and you cannot take terumah from it, because that's already been taken care of. Okay, so it's a useless gesture. Mishna 6. Here we go with the 5 again. 5 may not give terumah, but if they do, their terumah is valid. He that is mute, or drunken, or naked, or blind, or has suffered pollution by semen, these may not give terumah, but if they do, their terumah is valid. Mishna 7. Terumah may not be given according to measure, or weight, or number, though one may give it from that which has already been measured, weighed, or counted. Terumah may not be given in a basket or a hamper of a measured capacity, but a bushel or a peck, right? But if they be only about a half or a third filled, one may give terumah in them. Terumah may not be given in a vessel containing a seah, though it be only a half full, or this half constitutes for this half constitutes a known measure. Half a seah, right? Mishna 8. Oil may not be given as terumah from olives due to be crushed. Now, we know that olives that are crushed, that oil that's produced from olives that are crushed, are used for the lighting of it's used for oil of anointing, and it's used as the oil for the lamps in the menorah. Okay, and certain olives. And we just had an article from the Temple Institute talking about, this year being the first year that olives grown in the land of Israel, supervised by the rabbis and all of that other stuff, pure olive oil, to be used for the lighting of the Hanukkah, this is the first time that we've had oil that was actually fully in accordance with the laws. Which, you may not think that's a big deal, but it is a huge deal, especially for it happening to be used for Hanukkah, because we know all of during the Maccabean revolt, when they finally drove them out of the Beit HaMikdash, that all of the seals had been broken on the oil, and there was only one cruse of oil that left that was intact and still had the seal of the Kohen Gadol on it. Okay, so it was a big deal. Okay, so oil may not be given as terumah for oil due to be crushed, nor may wine for grapes due to be trodden. If, however, one has done so, his terumah is valid. But he must give terumah anew. Okay. So I'm assuming that means that he must give it again. So let's just see. Drop down here real. Yeah. Okay, so it points us to chapter 5 of Leviticus, verse 16. A lot of help. Okay. The first terumah renders produce into which it had fallen medumah, and is subject to the added fifth, but not the second. Mishnah 9. Terumah may be given from oil or olives due for pickling, or from wine or grapes about to be made into raisins. He who gives terumah from oil for olives intended for eating, or from other olives for olives intended for eating, or for wine or grapes intended for eating, from other grapes for grapes intended for eating, and decides afterwards to press them, need not give terumah anew. Okay, so in other words, he can change his mind. I mean, this was the intent when he gave the terumah. Okay, was to give it because, this is fruit that this is grapes. I'm going to make these into grapes and I'm going to eat them. Okay, and afterwards, maybe I won't make them grapes. Maybe I'll make wine out of them. Okay, according to this, he does not have to give terumah anew just because he changed his mind. Mishnah 10. Terumah may not be taken from produce in a finished state, for produce in an unfinished state, or from produce in an unfinished state for produce in a finished state. Okay. Nor can it be taken from produce in an unfinished state for other produce in an unfinished state. If, however, terumah has been taken, it is considered valid. Okay, boy, that'll make you think about 3 or 4 times. Okay, so we are on to Megillat Terumot, chapter 2, and we are about halfway through with our study. So we are going to take our break here, and I am going to see if I can coordinate the music and the video so that it so it coincides together. Let's see if I have any luck doing this. Okay, so that one we're done with. This is the one I want. Okay, let me get over here. Now I have to come over here. Okay, so let's stop that. Okay, so we're going to give this a shot. So let's hope for the best, folks.
Let's all go to the lobby. Let's all go to the lobby. Let's all go to the lobby to get ourselves a treat.
Delicious things to eat.
The popcorn can't be beat. The sparkling drinks are just dandy. The chocolate bars and the candy. So let's all go to the lobby to get ourselves a treat. Let's all go to the lobby to get ourselves a treat.
It's intermission time, folks. So hurry, hurry, hurry. Step right over to our refreshment center for the most extravagant array of refreshment goodies ever assembled under one roof. Enjoy breathtaking, mouth-watering goodies. Everything from a snack to a delicious full meal. At our refreshment center, You'll find a large variety of goodies to satisfy your hunger, your thirst, or your sweet tooth. So hurry, hurry, hurry. Visit our refreshment center now. The show starts in 5 minutes.
Okay, well, that worked out pretty good. We were maybe a couple of seconds off, but that actually worked out pretty good. At least that'll work until we, and here I go with the other mouse again. At least this will work until we get the mixer figured out how we can get that. Not that you folks actually even care, but saying that for my own purposes so that I feel a little better about it. Okay. So we are on we're at the very bottom of page 351. This is Mishna Megillat Terumot, chapter 2, and Mishnah number 1. Terumah may not be given from the clean for the unclean. Okay. So, being afraid that the unclean fruit defiles by contact the clean, he may take terumah from produce that is not lying nearby, contrary to the regulations. Okay. But if it is given, the terumah is valid. In other words, and all of these things, is basically if it's given in the intent without knowledge, maybe they didn't know it was unclean, that oh my goodness, I find out later on, oh my goodness, it was unclean. Well, the terumah is still valid. In truth, they have said, if a cake of pressed figs had become partly defiled, terumah may be taken from the clean part for that part which had become defiled. The same applies to a bunch of vegetables, or a sack of grain, or there were 2 cakes of figs, 2 bunches, 2 stacks of grain, and one of them was defiled and the other clean. Terumah cannot be given from one for the other. Rabbi Eliezer says that one can give terumah from that which is clean for that which is defiled. Okay, and then again, here I go with the mouse again. Put the mouse over here so I'm not constantly grabbing it. See, this is the problem with having to, work with 3 different computers going on all at the same time. It gets a bit confusing. Now, we haven't had to do that for a long time. There was a time back 5, 6, 7 years ago when we first started broadcasting that we were actually using multiple computers. And when you get out of the habit of doing that, you can lose the coordination really quick. And since we're just starting into this, this is going to be, it's going to be a little tricky for a while. But this brings up another point that I want to bring out. Well, that doesn't. But during the break, I was thinking about this, and I wanted to make sure that I shared this with you because we kind of we're very fortunate that we are able to study the Torah, study the Talmud, study the extra texts, the other texts and stuff and so on, which we have been doing for 10 years now. Over 10 years now we have been doing this. And I've been asked before by my own family, as well as others, why do you keep doing this? You think you've gone through this stuff, every year for 10 years now. Why don't you just post a video up and let them watch it, and Stop, you don't need to do the study. Well, yeah, you do. There's a couple of reasons why you do. And that's because, number one, every time you study, you learn something new. You have, and you've heard me all talk about this before, the aha moments. I have been reading this chapter since I was a child. Every year since I was a child. 58 years old, and all of a sudden, aha, I get it now. Now I understand it. That's why we continue to study. And don't think that this study is a little thing. The sages, the rabbis, all the great leaders of our people have told us what the importance is of study. The reason that the Jewish people exist to this day, and why the state of Israel exists today and will continue to exist, is by the merit of those who study the Torah and the Talmud and the other texts. So what you are doing is not a little thing. What you are doing is a huge thing, because what you are doing is ensuring the survival of the Jewish people, and you are ensuring the survival and the protection of the state of Israel. These are the things that bring Mashiach. This is why the Haredim think it is more important to study Torah, especially during times of conflict, that it is more important for them to study Torah and Talmud than to fight in the army. Because it is only through the merit of Torah and Talmud study does the people exist and continue to exist, and the land exist and continue to exist. So do not minimize what you are doing. What you are doing is so very, very important. So hopefully that'll keep you coming back all the time. There you go. Throw a little something at you there, huh? But no, it actually is. It is very important, and that's why it is important. And that is why I love to see when we have 9 people in the chat room, but we actually have 19 people who are viewing this right now. Now, if those 19 people, those 10 people who are not in the chat room who are watching, if you would come into the chat room, sign in, come into the chat room. The people in the chat room right now are nice people. I mean, they don't bite. At least they don't bite very hard, okay? They're a good group. They're a funny group. But they're also a serious group. And if all 19 people would next week bring one person with them, get one more person to listen, that's almost 40 people. And if we do it again, and we continue to grow these numbers of people who are studying Talmud and Torah every week, we'll have nothing to worry about the enemies that surround us. Absolutely nothing. It's important. It is not a little thing. That's why the sages tell us that it is very important to set aside time to study Torah. And again, I'm going to repeat this. Most of you who have been here with us for a while already know this. We study these things at night. And the reason that we study them at night is because the rabbis and the Kabbalists have told us that studying Torah at night, which Talmud is Torah, mitigates harsh judgments against us personally and against us as a people. So never diminish the study of Torah and never diminish your participation in the study of Torah. It is a very important thing. Okay, let us get back to grapes and figs and all those things. I'm getting hungry reading this thing, I'm telling you. I'm going to have a nosh after this. Now I understand why after the study they say you should eat something after study. You have to nourish your body after the study. Well, you study this stuff, you can understand why. It makes you hungry. Okay, so Mishnah number 2. We are on page 352. Terumah may not be given from unclean produce for that which is clean. Of course, we've been hearing about this for chapters now, right? And if it was given unwittingly, again, we talked about this already. If it was given unwittingly, the terumah is valid. If intentionally, okay? If you knew it was contaminated, and you said, well, nobody's going to know, who's going to know? God's going to know. And you are going to know. So if it was done intentionally, the act's void. Has no meaning whatsoever. It's just like the sacrifice. If you make a sacrifice and you don't have the proper mindset and you don't have the proper intention in your heart, the sacrifice is void. It means nothing. You might as well have not even gone. So too, if a Leviim, or Levite, had unclean tithe from which terumah had not been given, and he gave terumah from this, if performed in error, his action is valid. But if intentionally, his act is of no effect. Okay? Remember, the law is the same. It is the same for the Kohanim, for the Leviim, and for the Israelite. It is also the same for the Ger who is in the land. One law for all. Okay? And we've talked about this. We just read about this. That Gentiles would bring sacrifices. And they would be accepted. As long as their intention was correct. Okay, so Rabbi Yehuda says, if he knew of it at the outset, even if done in error, his action is of no effect. Okay? If he knew it was contaminated from the outset, even if it, he did it in error, and he knew it was contaminated, means nothing. Okay, I just want to check on the chat board here. I want to mention everybody who is here in the chat room. John D, Soshi, Ben, Daniel, Daniel and Brooke. I don't know if Brooke is with you, but let me know if Brooke is with you. Let's see. Yair was here. Crystal was here. And because I thanked her for the honey. I remember that. And I think that was everybody that we had in the chat room. If I'm forgetting anybody, I apologize. But if I forgot you, just pop up on the chat line, and I'll recognize you, because I want to recognize you. I want to recognize you. I want you to get credit for what you're doing. Remember what I said. This stuff is important. And I didn't mean to sound like Zeta right then, but I get a little excited. This is important, and you should be recognized. Okay, so where were we? Oh yeah, talking about clean and unclean, the Levi'im. Okay, Mishnah 3. He who immerses unclean vessels on the Sabbath in error may use them, but if done deliberately, he may not use them. Okay, if he knew they were unclean, he'd deliberately immerse them to make them clean on the Sabbath. Doesn't make any difference. They're still unclean. He who separates tithes or cooks on the Sabbath unwittingly may eat of it. Okay. Lose track of the days. I mean, I've done that a lot. I've done that. I was walking around all day today thinking today was Monday. It was actually Tuesday. Just like, it's amazing. As you get older, that happens more and more, doesn't it? Must be something about that. Anyway, I mean, if people weren't doing it, it wouldn't be in the Talmud, right? So obviously, people for a long time have been, oh my goodness, I'm cooking and here it is, it's on the Sabbath. Oh my goodness, I didn't even realize it was the Sabbath. Okay? Now, you can see how that could easily happen, like, with a lot of the members of our congregation. They are not in a big Jewish community. Some of them are miles away from a Jewish community and stuff like that. And people do have a tendency to forget what day it is sometimes, If, your whole thing is, working on a farm and stuff like that, where, one day is pretty much the same as the next day, you could see how that could easily happen. Somebody forget that is a Sabbath and actually cook on it. Okay, if we were living in Williamsburg or in Brooklyn or someplace like that, wouldn't be a big deal, because you would know it was Sabbath, right? You'd be able to tell. People would be coming by you and saying Shabbat Shalom and rushing to the store to get their stuff for the Sabbath meals, and the smells of cooking in the air and all that other stuff. You would know it was Shabbos, right? But for those of us who live very distant from a large Jewish community or even a small Jewish community, it's kind of easy. It doesn't happen often, but I can see very easily where it would, it could actually happen. For me, there's really no excuse, because, I do services. If I'm doing services, I know it's the Sabbath. I mean, you've never seen me do a Shabbos service on a Thursday, right? Okay. At least not yet. I'll put it that way. At least not yet. Okay. And John says, Zeta is watching you, Rabbi. Zeta's always watching me. Okay. So, some people wonder who's really the dummy. Anyway, okay, so somebody who cooks on the Sabbath unwittingly may eat it. But if he did it intentionally, he may not eat it. He who plants anything on the Sabbath in error can allow it to remain, but if he deliberately, he must uproot it. But during the sabbatical year, whether it was planted unwittingly or deliberately, he must uproot it. This is the Shemitah year. And again, as I told everybody before, that Every year we do Zeta's Garden, right? And this year there will be no Zeta's Garden because of the Shemitah year, and our beds, at least two of the big beds, the ones that we usually do for the pictures and stuff like that for Zeta's Garden, do actually have soil from the land of Israel in there. We did that intentionally. So this year there will be no Zeta's Garden. We may put some pictures up, with Zeta out there seeing whatever grows, grows. Okay, but we're not planting or anything like that. So, just so you know, there won't be any Zeta's Garden, and it might look if we do take some pictures, the beds are going to look kind of shabby. So, just so you know. Okay, so where were we? Immersing vessels, cooking, and planting. Okay, Mishnah number 4. Terumah may not be given from one kind for another kind. If one does so, the terumah is not valid. All kinds of wheat count as one. Okay, so the different varieties of wheat. The different varieties are not counted separately. They're all counted as wheat. But when we're talking about this, one kind cannot be substituted for another. I mean, you cannot substitute, you can't substitute grapes for beans, because they're not the same, Okay. All kinds of fresh figs, dried figs, and fig cakes count as one. Okay, and terumah can be taken from one for the other. So you can take figs in place of the cake, or cake instead of the figs, or whatever. And where there be no priest, terumah must be given of the kind which keeps longest. Something new. So we we take the terumah from whatever is going. If we're taking from like, we're going to give from that which lasts the longest. Rabbi Yehuda says, at all times must it be given only from the very best. So even if one lasts longer than the other, but the other is the better quality, you always go to give the terumah from whatever is the best quality. Okay. Mishnah 5. A whole onion, though small, should be given as terumah rather than half a large onion. Better a whole than a half, right? Rabbi Yehuda says, not so, but half of a large onion. So too, Rabbi Yehuda said, terumah should be given from town onions for those of the village, but not from village onions for those of the town, since these are the food of its principal citizens. So whatever the people are tending to eat. This kind of goes along with what we were talking about. We follow the minhag of the community. Well, it kind of goes along with that, because it's saying here that, okay, well, if it comes from the town, that is the major source of onions for the village. That is their minhag. So we follow the minhag. Okay? And we give from those that the people are tend to eat. Of course, me, I would always go for the village. Okay, or that's why we have farmers markets, right? Mishna number 6, and we're getting about to the end of our time here. So, Mishna number 6, terumah may be given from olives to be used for oil for those due to be preserved, but not from olives due to be preserved for olives to be used for oil. It may be given from unboiled wine for boiled wine, but not from boiled wine or unboiled wine. Okay, so why would you boil wine, right? Of course, really, you wouldn't actually boil it. You would actually bring it up to a temperature. Basically, what you're trying to do is you're trying to kill off the yeast, right? That's what makes a wine kosher LePesach, right? Kosher for Pesach. Is because the yeast has been killed off so that it doesn't continue to ferment. Okay, so when we're talking about boiled wine here and unboiled wine, boiled wine is obviously wine that has been brought to a temperature to kill off the yeast to make it kosher LePesach. At least that's my interpretation of this. Okay, so this is the general rule. Any two things which together infringe the law of diverse kinds cannot be used for terumah from one for the other, even if the kind from which it is given to be superior to the one which it is given. But if they do not constitute diverse kinds, such as we talked about the various kinds of wheat, then one may give terumah from the superior kind for that which is inferior, but not from the inferior kind for that which is superior. Always go with the superior. If one does give terumah from an inferior kind for that which is superior, his terumah is valid, except when tares are given for wheat, since these are, on the next page, not food. Cucumbers and sweet melons count as one kind. Rabbi Yehuda says two kinds. And again, we finish off with a dissenting opinion. And that's great. Let's finish our study on a dissenting opinion. So we will stop here and we will pick up next time. We'll be on Terumot chapter 3, page 354 of the PDF. So once again, I have to coordinate all these things to make sure that we do this. And again, okay, we are finished. So let us do the brucha to conclude our. That's not it. It's over here. Oh, no, it's not in Yizkor. Why am I looking in Yizkor? Anybody can tell me that? Why am I looking in Yizkor? Okay. I know the blessing. I just want to make sure that I get it right. You know, I have a tendency to kind of forget things right in the middle of them. So, Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam, Asher natan lanu Torah emet v'chayei olam natan betochinu baruch atah Adonai noten ha-Torah. And again, I want to thank all of you for being with us tonight for this study. Don't forget, tomorrow night, we will be back here at 8 p.m. Zeta and myself to do the Torah study for this week's Parsha. And I hope you will be with us. And until then, we will just say, Laila Tov.